So capital raising is a challenge. And the other thing which is key is a good indication if a team is good or bad is if at the first close they bring at least one person who trusts them. Because no matter what, the first guys investing in a fund are people who trust us or them. And it's critical to see this small, large, doesn't matter, ticket who confirms that someone believes on them from now.
I'm Aoife Devitt, and welcome to the 50 Faces podcast, a podcast committed to revealing the richness and diversity of the world of investment by focusing on its people and their stories. I'm joined today by Stavros Tsiokos, managing partner and co-founder at Astarte Capital Partners. He started his career with Salomon Brothers in New York City in the mid-90s and was sent to London, where later he was managing director of Citigroup, responsible for the global trading strategies across the firm and product solutions for all pension funds and insurance companies across the world. He was formerly head of investment management at Piraeus Bank also. He's originally from Greece, but has lived outside there since 1990, mainly in the USA, where he did his PhD and Masters, and the UK. Welcome, Stavros. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here and very excited to be part of the 50 Faces podcast.
Great. Well, we normally start with our guest's career journey, but can we first start with you explaining the business model of Astarte? Because I think that you can probably articulate that better than I can.
Yes, thank you. It's quite a unique model. It started as an idea to give access to institutional investors into thematic real assets that they can usually they cannot access. So we're looking into macroeconomic trends, mega macroeconomic trends like aging population, need for food, need for water, try to identify which strategies benefit out of these mega trends. And then we identify these strategies and define teams that they can deliver these strategies. And we create asset management businesses with operating teams that have the expertise on the delivering these strategies. What's unique about our model is we don't charge management performance fees. We just share the profitability of the business we built. So we create a model where we give access to real assets investments, where most of the capital goes into real assets, operated by experienced teams with no management performance fees, where you share the profitability of the business you built. It's quite a unique model. It's different, and we have won a lot of awards because of that. It's the most aligned model, to be honest, that I know in the industry, where you get paid from what you deliver, and you take all the pain and gain that your investors do.
Great. Well, we'll certainly chat a bit more about that later as we look at the opportunity set that you're seeing. But let's rewind now a little and go back to your career journey. Can you talk about your childhood, your early interests, and how you came to enter finance?
As you said at the beginning, I'm Greek. I grew up in Athens from a middle-class family. As a family, we faced a lot of challenges at the beginning because there was some health issues for my father. That was an amazing, difficult time, but an amazing educating time as well, because you realize what is important in life. And what is important in life is health and family. And that pushed me into trying to achieve something better all the time. I always was interested in the computer science. So I started my education, my career as a computer scientist. Totally different than the computer scientists we know now. It was the beginning of PCs and the beginning of computers, so it was a different game. I studied at the University of Patras. I learned from my grandfathers, which were both of them were pilots for the Greek Air Force during World War II, that you can achieve whatever you want if you really work hard for it. After computer science studying in Greece, I went to the States. I did a master's still in computer science. I was part of the team that was developing mobile phone antennas, which was a new exciting thing in the mid-80s. And then I moved into, for my PhD, into financial engineering, because I thought the markets were very interesting. And I have a unique interest for data and computer engineering in terms of financial models. So I went into financial engineering more as a quant analyst, if you like. And from that, I was hired by Salomon Brothers, who wanted to buy my model initially. And I told them, instead of buying my model, how about you hire me to work for you? And by accident, basically, I ended up at Salomon Brothers, which was an amazing school at the time, which again, I learned a lot, amazing people. A lot of books have been written about Salomon Brothers. And I started my career as a quant analyst, as the geek around the corner that no one understood what I was doing. From that, we moved into the trading strategies. We moved into providing pension fund solutions, moving technology into the trading. And this career grew up, and I became managing director. I think I still am the youngest managing director ever become at Salomon Brothers at Citigroup. I became managing director 1 year after I joined from university. So I was never director or anything like that. So it was quite a unique trip. Amazing people, I learned a lot. And I started in the brokerage, and then I ended up into the asset. 12 years, 13 years, I am into the asset management angle. Initially for liquid markets, hedge funds, fund of funds, managed account platforms. And for the last 10 years, I'm in the private markets, where I focus on the real assets.
Very interesting. Well, certainly that trajectory is hard to match, being made managing director 1 year after joining from university. I'm interested in your early interest in data. How much do you think that interest in data, engineering, quant methods has now contributed to what you do today? And do you still draw on those skills?
For what I do today, actually, it doesn't help me at all. And I'll be quite honest. I think many people ask me how much I use for my PhD, and I say my PhD is the best doorstopper because I don't use this anymore. And also, what has changed since the time I was a student is, and when I was at Salomon Brothers and Citigroup, is the computer power has gone exponentially up. And what the models we were using at the time and the data we could use at the time was totally different. So at that time, it was pioneering work, was still used. But now in the private markets, data are different. What I learned from that is how to model data and how to make sense out of that. And this has been exceptionally useful on anything that has to do with ESG today. Because in the private markets, there's not a lot of ESG data, and there's not a lot of models of how you can take this data and make them real and practical. There's a lot of data, but there's not a lot of practical. Where in the liquid markets, everything is developed very well. In the private markets, the data need cleaning. They need filtering, they need modeling. And I know how to do that because I've done this in the times that data were not clean for the markets. You didn't have a lot of sources. You have to combine different things. And that is the only angle I'm using now. Exceptionally useful. Not many people understand it, but that's the only way I'm using the data now. Private markets have less data by definition. But the private markets are moving closer to what people require for the liquid markets. And that's when the two of them merge, that's where you get the interest in the data.
We will definitely return to the concept of exponential growth as well as ESG just a little bit later. But let's talk now about what drove you to start up Astarte and your own firm. And was that always on the cards for you, or how did that come about?
It was not always in the cards. I always wanted to do something at one point of my career where I do something to improve things for the world. And after some time and many years of 25 years, 30 years basically into the industry, I became naive enough that I thought I could do it myself, because you have to be a bit crazy, a little bit naive to start your own thing. We started Astarte 7 years ago, and we managed to grow it into international business now. We have presence from Sydney to Toronto and from Stockholm to Paraguay. So we became a global business. The whole thing started by trying to bring something into the asset management business which is more fair, more aligned, but more important than anything else, has a real impact in the world. And having a real impact in the world is what drives us today. And I'll give you one simple example. We're the only, I think, private equity business. Part of our carry we give to non-privileged kids to get educated. We support women in Africa, women in India as part of our carry. As we are earning money, we give it back to society. So we wanted to do something which really supports the investment community, changes the investment community, aligns the investment community, but also helps the work we're doing today. We have a forest in Paraguay. We're the biggest employer there. We changed the whole area, schools, employment, the environment. So we wanted to do something which really has an impact. And that's how I started. If I knew what I know today, I wouldn't start it. It was the most difficult thing I have ever done in my career. And a lot of people ask me, how does it feel? I think it takes double the time, double the money, half your friends. That's what it takes to start a business like that. And as Warren Buffett said once, the definition of success to start a business like that is to stay solvent until you get lucky. And all this combination is a very challenging trip, a very rewarding trip if you manage to make it after some time. But it is the biggest school I've ever been. From all my career, the last 7 years have been the biggest school I ever had.
Let's just dig a little deeper into some of those, because I think that's really fascinating, your experience and looking back. So half the friends, what do you mean by that? You double the money, but half the friends?
Basically, when you work in a corporate environment and you work with someone next to him or her, it's totally different when you are partners and you have to face pain together. When you have to see everyday life and everyone has to contribute in an environment that's not a protective bubble. So not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Some people are great employees. Some people can afford risk and stomach risk. Some people cannot afford risk. So when you start working with different environments and different conditions, which is new to everyone, because a startup, because that's what a startup was at the beginning, is a totally new ecosystem. You don't know how people react until you see them in specific conditions. I am different than I thought I was. People I started business working together, long-term friends, became different or are different. So until you really have to share things, build things, you really don't know. It's like a marriage life, correct? Until it evolves and you have to adjust or divorce. And you can be the best with all the good intentions, but life takes you to different paths. And also the other thing that happens in small businesses is if people don't carry their weight, it's very difficult for the team to survive, especially at the beginning. So I learned a lot from that on how I trust people, how I mix with people, what I promise to people, what is the benefit of working in a new startup environment. And that has been the biggest school. And it's the biggest school for us because what we're doing now is we're building asset management businesses. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from what we faced. And that's the biggest, take the capital out we offer and the know-how and all these things to the business we build. We know what are the issues a team can face. We know the challenges. We know all the things that can come up because you cannot have a good times and always. You have good times and bad times. You have COVID showing up. You have Brexit showing up. You have unexpected things happening. And that is the experience we also try to give to the teams we work together, which is, it's like trying to explain to someone how is falling in love. If you don't fall in love, you cannot describe it. You have to go through it. And then you can say it's like falling in love. But if you don't experience it, you cannot describe it anyway.
Well, that's certainly a wonderful image. I'm just really interested now in segueing to some of the teams you work with. What would be sort of some of the features you look for in a team? And where do you think some of the weak links can be? And I'm thinking of capital raising. Because obviously the badge of success of an asset manager will be asset growth. And often that capital raising piece perhaps is one where there often are a lot of perhaps overly enthusiastic expectations, and it's difficult to meet those expectations, maybe difficult to get the right formula. So I'd be curious to see what you're looking for in a team and where you can add the most value in terms of maybe bridging a gap.
The first thing we are interested, I am personally interested, is the chemistry. The chemistry between us and the team and between the members of the team. Because no matter what else, this is the most important. This is a people's business. It's a people's business, and you will be together for 10, 12 years, at least, maybe longer, hopefully longer. So you must be able to work with that person. You must be able to argue and be friends. You must be able to listen and respect. So that's the first thing. The second thing which is very important to us is the team have been together for some time. So it's a team that it's not random put together for the purpose of creating an asset management business. It's a team that has worked together for some time, has a track record, successful track record, and they have been through different parts, different cycles. So they know the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is very, very important. The third thing, which is very important, is that the team has the same long targets. If you take 3 bankers and you tell them to do shipping, when the shipping changes, they're going to go away. If you take a family who does shipping for 80 years and they are 4th generation, they're not going to walk away. They're going to be there because that's the name, that's the tradition, that's what they do, and that's what they will be doing in good and bad times. So we try to find people who it's a passion that they want to grow and have discretionary capital on their hands. In terms of capital raising is the most difficult part, especially for a first-time team. And my rule is the 10% of 10%. What I mean by that, you go to 100 people, 10 are interested, 1 will invest. Okay, that's how it works. So what we do as a catalyst, we provide the seed capital, which is usually 5 to 10 or 15% of the first overall capital, which is significant. We have some investors who follow us and come next to us. So immediately you can have a first close between $50 and $100 million, which is very, very significant. We provide working capital, which gives the team the power to hire the right people and create a comfortable environment where they don't have to worry about their survival. They're paying the rent, paying the mortgage, paying the school fees, paying whatever everyone liabilities everyone has. And then we support them into the processes, institutionalize them. You can have a very successful operator who knows how to run a student accommodation building, but doesn't mean he's institutional reporting. Doesn't mean he knows how to do it or she knows how to do it in a way that's acceptable by institutional capital. So after we do all this, we wrap it up. We have them on ESG. We are very, very strong on ESG, on how to measure it, how to apply it. And then we take them to the 10, 15, 20, 30 people we might be interested in investing on that, connect them with consultants. An operating team is very difficult to know the right consultants, and also connect them with third-party marketing teams. We're not capital raisers. We have 10, 15, 20, 30 relationships. We go to professional teams who know how to raise the capital for a specific strategy. If you have a real estate strategy, you might go to a team that focuses on real estate. If you go into infrastructure, you go to a team that focuses on infrastructure. What I learned is usually you don't go to big ones because they like Fund 25 of Apollo because it's easy to raise 25 billion. You have to go to 100 people again, which are more usually smaller guys who are focused on a specific market or sector, and they would like to do it. So capital raising is a challenge. And the other thing which is key is a good indication if a team is good or bad is if at the first close, they bring at least one person who trusts them. Because no matter what, the first first guys to invest in any fund are people who trust us or them. And it's critical to see this small, large, doesn't matter, ticket who confirms that someone believes on them from now.
That's a fascinating insight. I would imagine not just for the founder of an investment management firm, but for any founder of any firm. That is an interesting test of their credibility, I suppose, and their trustworthiness. So really interesting. Let's go back to that concept earlier. We talked about exponential growth and translate that into maybe the next wave of growth in asset management. You've spoken about ESG and how much value you bring there. But if you were to look across, say, strategy types, where do you see the next wave of opportunity? And are there areas that you think could have exponential growth in the next, say, decade within asset management?
I think we will see an exponential growth on further exponential growth on private debt. I think with the whole banking sector, all these being like different position than used in the past, I think private debt will still be in a very attractive area and very busy area. I think we're going to see a development of asset managers that invest on content. It can be content of data, content of movies, content of music. It's going to be content that people need to use. And I think that's an area which is still getting developed, but it's more on the venture capital area, I would say, than anything else. Definitely real assets. We're going to have inflation pressures, definitely, and with everything happening. So I think real assets will become more of an interest of investment. People will increase the allocation we have into real assets. And we're going to see, as we've seen over COP26, I think a significant investment into anything that supports the fight against climate change. You will see more investments from venture capital to real assets into anything that drives economies towards a net zero. That's going to be a huge focus over the next decade, 10, 15 at least years on how we invest. The other area which I think we're going to see huge investment, especially in Europe and North America, is infrastructure. We have aging infrastructure, especially in North America. We have new technologies coming. So smart infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and in the case of the US, even core infrastructure, I think we'll see an exponential growth, both from private as well as from state-owned capital. So this is the idea. So natural capital, infrastructure, private debt are the areas I see the most. I think on the liquid side, it's going to be more challenging times. The macro bets are difficult and will become much more difficult as climate is changing, and especially with inflation. I think more people will move into index-based products, if you ask me, for the liquid side. It's more difficult to beat the index as index becomes bigger, the benchmark becomes bigger, and the cost is much less. So it became a commoditized business. And I think technology will still be a huge area where we're going to see, but it's going to be different technology from what we know now. I think we're going to move from the development of applications to support businesses and people into technology that manages challenges in data. Because the biggest problem, we have now the power, we have the technology, we now are getting across the data we want. Now we have to process it in a quick way. So I think that's where the challenge will be. And on the transportation side, I think we're going to see a revolution across all types of transportation. We've seen Tesla in the car industry. there will be a Tesla in aviation. There will be a Tesla in shipping. There will be a Tesla in rail. There will be drones we've seen small drones carrying small packages for Amazon. We're going to fly with the drones. We're going to do shipping drones. We're going to see rail drones. So transportation, which is kind of a value-added infrastructure, if you want, is going to have a huge exponential. And finally, if we go into energy, there's a big bet the world is taking into electricity. The problem with electricity is, first of all, you need to store it. And in order to store it, you need to have good batteries. In order to have good batteries, you need to mine a lot. And if we take all the batteries we need in the world, we don't have enough metals to do that. So we cannot, and we want to be environmental on one side, but ESG on the other, and no mining, but we want the batteries. So there's a challenge there. And there's also a challenge of how the grid will accept all these cars and all this electricity. We need to invest too much into that. So there's a big challenge of how we're moving everything to electricity, but the infrastructure for electricity or the storage capacity of electricity is not there. So this is a big challenge. So I think the biggest move we will see is not going to be electricity, but it's going to be hydrogen. I think hydrogen is where we should all be looking at. And within the next 10, 15 years, the next Tesla will be hydrogen. And if we manage how to safely transfer, store, and use hydrogen, which is happening very quickly, I believe, we're into really ESG, really sustainable, and really having an impact. The way we're going down for electricity, without using, when still 60% of electricity is produced by coal or oil or anything like that, it's either we go all nuclear, which is one way, but it has its issues, or we have to go all hydrogen. So in the energy sector, I think we're going to see a lot of people struggling, but we have to move into hydrogen. And one last thing, I'm sorry it took too much time, but one last thing which is important. Another area where you see explosive growth is carbon credits. And carbon credits, people now ignore them. And they say it's something that I don't know how to deal with it. And what will be more interesting with carbon credits is, I think over the next 2 to 3 years, investors will prohibit polluters, to buy carbon credits. They will not let people buy their way out of pollution. So I think we will see now really big corporates really investing into forests. Because, by the way, forests are the only proven technology to absorb carbon. We have all these type of things. The only proven technology is a tree outside the house. The rest, we're trying to develop it. So that carbon credit is going to be an explosive market. It's very fragmented. There's a huge opportunity there to climatic changes to create all this. And this gives me the opportunity to say we will see exchanges developed of new type of products we have not even thought of it today.
Well, that's
the only exchange we know.
Climate tech, of course, potential, its own exponential potential. And I was actually just going to ask you about your forest investments. And we've seen this pledge from COP26 around to end deforestation by 2030. We know we've seen pledges like that before, which perhaps haven't been acted upon. What does that mean for, say, a forest investment like you're making? Is that made with a view to being a carbon sink or to be a carbon offset for a company? Is there any investment opportunity in the timber right now? And can you just talk about the deforestation?
Yes. So first of all, I think timber as an investment is a great investment now for the simple reason, first of all commodities are going up, correct? So we need more commodities. And when you increase the population of the world and middle class across the world is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, more people need commodities, especially wood-based products, as we're replacing plastic, correct? So we need more paper. And everyone says we need more paper, but the only way you can get paper is either recycling it or producing through controlled environments of forests. So timber as timber for the production and development of paper and wood products is definitely a good investment. Okay, much better than before. The problem with forests is there are not many places in the world you can do that because there's not a lot of space you can develop new forests. Where you have the water, you have and forests that matter. If you have a forest in Scotland, it doesn't have the same impact as the forest in South America, correct? In Scotland, they grow 2 centimeters a year. In Uruguay, they grow 2 centimeters a day. So the difference in terms of what you can achieve is huge. So as timber as a timber has definitely value, additive forestry, which means creating new forests, creates also new carbon credits. So you get an extra boost from the returns of the timber from the carbon credits. And what's important with carbon credits, forests create the best quality carbon credits because they bring something new to the environment and they take pollution out. So I think as an investment is going to be huge. Yes, they announced, I saw four people announcing they're starting new forestry businesses. We started 3 years ago. We have the first fund now getting deployed. And I believe it's going to be huge, strong interest. What is complicated with forestry is you have a lot of people with very strong opinions about what can be cultivated, where it can be cultivated, and how it should be done. So I think there are going to be some challenges in some places in the world, because some people would like to see only endogenous type of trees. Some others would like to bring some new types of trees. Another thing that will change forestry dramatically has to do with climate change. As temperatures go up, the type of trees you have, for example, Mediterranean, might need to be adjusted for the simple reason that when the temperature goes up by 2 or 3 Celsius, you have more fires. So you might want to develop some zones of protected type of forests which they don't burn quickly, so you can protect them. If you go back to the same trees, with the temperatures increasing, you just can have more fires. So we need to think as countries, as United Nations, as people, as investors, what is the best mix for the new forests we have as the climate adjusts. As you said at the beginning, I'm from Greece. This summer of 2021, we had among the most catastrophic fires in Greece. They happened during a week where Greece witnessed temperatures of 47 Celsius. I am 52. I don't remember ever a temperature of that, even for a day, and we had 6 days of 47. We had the biggest snowstorm I've ever seen in last February, 1 meter of snow downtown Athens, and we had 6 months of rain dropped last week in 1 day. Okay, this is massive, it's happening, and we need to adjust our forests for that. The problem is also, people are very nationalistic when it comes to forests. A lot of people say, I will only invest in my country forests. It doesn't matter if they are the least producing forests in the world, but I am Greek, I want to be in Greece. I'm French, I want to be in France. I'm English, I want to be in England. We have to open these barriers. Forests, the most important forests are South America, Central Africa, Southeast Asia. Why? They grow quickly. That's what we need. We need them to grow quickly. Planting a forest outside Aberdeen looks fantastic, but doesn't grow quickly. Correct. That's a key in the essence. And we need to be all together on that. We need to. And the other thing, I'm sorry, it'll take 1 second. We have to mention something which is very important. Europe and North America and China are doing their job now with forests. We're producing more forests than we're taking out. Where the problem is humongous is in South America, and that's where we have to pay attention, India, and Southeast Asia. So instead of trying to see how we make Europe better. Europe is if everyone was coming half the way where Europe is, we wouldn't have a problem. And people need to listen to this. If we were half the way where Australia or Canada is, we wouldn't have a problem. The problem is other regions don't follow that. So we need all of us to invest on those regions, on the emerging markets, wherever they are, to bring the forest back of where it should be and give the local people enough reasons not to do deforestation, but do afforestation, to put new forests there. And if we don't do it together, then we will still cut the trees because they will need to produce soya, they will need to produce corn, they will need to have a cow. So we need to invest outside our comfort zone and our small national borders for them to be able to achieve that.
Well, that's a fascinating topic. And I think we probably could have spent an entire podcast on that deforestation and forestry opportunity alone. Let me just take you to a few closing questions, though. Unfortunately, we're at that stage. It's been a really wonderful discussion. So looking back, we've talked already about some lessons learned, some challenges, certainly when starting a Starday, and how you've translated those lessons now into learnings for other groups. Looking back at your own journey, were there any key people who influenced you along your career or personal path, and how?
There were several people. The first person who really taught me a lot was my grandfather from my mother's side. He, at the age of 6, he lost his parents from a genocide happening in the Black Sea. He had to walk alone from the Black Sea to Greece. And he joined the Greek Air Force at the age of 14 for the only reason they were offering him food. And he was one of the first pilots of the Greek Air Force during World War II. He was captured, he was sent in concentration camps, he escaped, he did all this. He never complained, always went for it, always challenged everything. He had a beautiful family, he lived until his 90s. And he taught me that life is a parenthesis anyway, so enjoy every day and make the most of it. So that was the first person. The second people are my parents, because they really taught me the value of education. That it doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are, the biggest education you can offer someone or to yourself is something that no one can take away from you. So, and I owe a lot to my parents, because after they have sacrificed a lot for me to get the good education I took when I was a child. Then I owe a lot to two people. One is Tom Schneeweiss, who was my professor at the University of Massachusetts, who gave me a chance to go into different things. And Alan Aguirre, who was professor on my PhD, who basically taught me how to work alone and not depend on people. Doing a PhD is the most lonely thing. And many times you question yourself, you want to leave everything, and it's quite challenging. And especially Tom, because Tom is the guy who told me, you better leave academia and go to Salomon Brothers. Someone knocks my head and say, go and do this. And that changed my career. Parents, they have been the biggest lesson of my life, to be honest, because you realize what's important in life. And finally, my wife, Teresa, who taught me a lot of things on how to build businesses, how to balance things, and how to keep a good life. And because the most important things in life, no matter what, is family, is health first, and family. And I think if you have these two components strong and healthy, then everything comes into place. And finally, one thing I learned is you cannot please everyone. But you should care only for the people you can really have an impact. And as long as you can try not to hurt anyone. Long answer, but these are the people who I owe a lot. And I am if I can say one thing, the only thing I care in life is to give the ability to young people to get educated. So from the age of 22, when I started earning my first money, I give a significant portion of my income to educate people. I have educated 28 people at Central University, because I think that's the best thing you can leave behind as a legacy.
Well, that is a wonderful collection of wisdom there, and probably a good place to bring our conversation to a close. I think what I've taken from our conversation is a tremendous amount of passion, impact, and a deep humility, which actually I think is probably one of your most valuable gifts, because it's that humility through success that makes what you've done so accessible and so attainable, perhaps, to young people. And I think it's not out of reach. It's human. It's complex, and it's based on lessons learned. So I think it's been a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much, Stavros, for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being with you. Thank you.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice, and all views are personal and should not be attributed to the organisations and affiliations of the host or any guest.